Good evening. It's Graham Healy from Rise Up Australia, Brisbane 2025. The Truth blog, prophetic and political. Now, I'm observing what the major issue is in Australia, and certainly there's economic issues. Certainly there's, houses crisis issues and what have you. But the real dark horse behind all of this is Islamic terrorism. So when you have a look at what's happening worldwide, and of course in the background I've got Pauline Hanson's, well, actually Pauline Hanson and, One Flag, One Voice, One Nation, which Pauline, and the reason why I'm supporting Pauline these days, I've known, I was actually asked to be a Senate candidate for One Nation at one point, but I've got an independent stance on most things, so I don't want to get tied into party politics. However, what I'm finding is that One Nation now with Cory Bernardi and Barnaby Joyce and Bernie down in Melbourne. I'll look at Bernie Flynn, that's right. Bernie's a great guy too. So, there's some real, what I call people that are on the right side of history joining One Nation. Now, in saying that, I believe that Pauline has, since the 7th of October 2023, the massacre in Israel, and also since the Bondi massacre on the you forget now, but is it the 24th or 14th of December? 14th of December 2025. I hope I got that date right. I'm just going from memory now. Everything happened so fast. She's the only one who stood up in all the politics and all the political figures, they all have their shortcomings. But at the end of the day, who is standing up for Israel? Who is standing up against the dark forces behind Islam, which is terrorism? I don't see anyone. Some of my associates in the political scene that I had a lot of respect for, that sort of went into the garbage bin when they started to go anti-Semitic. And then also with the freedom movement, some of the characters in the freedom movement very much so anti-Semitic. They're Zionist phobic. They've got some sort of fear that Israel's going to take over the world or some ridiculous statement like that. It's really the spirit of, I call it the spirit of Nazism. In other words, the spirit of Hitler. So when you see what happened in World War II, the Labor government, basically under, the Labor government there, wasn't Chifley. It was, I'll think of it in a second. They appeased Hitler. And we'll just look that up right now while I'm thinking about it. I think I wrote it in one of the statements there. Where are we? Wasn't Chifley you're right, appeasing Hitler in the UK. Appeasing Hitler in the UK, and of course it was Neville Chamberlain. So Neville Chamberlain was doing deals, or tried to do deals, with Nazi Germany. And of course, the person who stood up was Winston Churchill. Okay. Likewise, Albanese, who is a terrorist appeaser, there's no question about that. how the hell he ever became Prime Minister and claims to be representing the majority of Australia. Well, he really isn't. You know, he only got in on 30% of the vote, and the only reason he got in is we had no opposition, and still we have no opposition except for One Nation. One Nation is starting to rise up. Now, this is interesting because what I'm seeing is the main issue in Australia. Yes, it's the economy. Yes, it's the, lack of, housing at the wrong interest rates and interest and all the rest of it, the usual sort of stuff. But what is really hitting home in in the psychic of Australia is Islamic terrorism. That's what the red line is. And the only one, as I keep saying, the only one who is standing up against Islamic terrorism and its roots, just look what happened with Albanese and Lakemba Mosque. I mean, Lakemba Mosque was responsible for something like, I don't know, 140 jihadists in the ISIS business. So that's been a seed bed of terrorism where they've grown homegrown Islamic terrorists out of that particular mosque in that area. So, we've got a cancer growing in this country and it's got to be addressed. The only politicians addressing it is Pauline Hanson and, Corey Bernardi and actually even, Barnaby Joyce. He's doing a good job there as well. So, and Bernie Flynn, he's doing a great job. So these, and of course Malcolm Roberts. So irrespective of the behind the scenes stuff, which I'm well aware of on every one of these political parties, who's running them and who I don't trust and who I do trust. The bottom line is, what is the leadership doing? And as far as I can see, that there's a great momentum. It's like a big orange wave coming behind Pauline Hanson, and this may be her finest hour. So, I don't think that the support initially, admittedly, I thought the support might have been just, an early, flash in the pan, but this momentum's growing and you're getting some solid politicians joining the party now. So it's become basically the equivalent of what Nigel Farage is doing in the UK. So good for Pauline. And the other thing is you've got to realise why this is happening. Why is it happening? Well, the spiritual reason of why it's happening is Pauline has stood up for the people of Israel, and therefore, according to Genesis 12:3, those that bless Israel will be blessed, those that curse Israel will be cursed. A lot of people cursing Israel in the political field at the moment, including Albanese government. Of course, you expect the Albanese government and the Greens to be cursing Israel. They're being controlled by the devil himself. They couldn't lie straight in bed. They just lie. And of course, the Liberals are on their knees. They've got the lowest point score in any political party since they were formed, I think. So what's the reason for that? Well, they've tried to be like Labor. That's the reason. They still believe in climate change too. So net zero and all that, they still got that on their agenda. So this is the patheticness of the Liberal Party. So the only alternative in Australia now is One Nation. So there were other politicians that I backed previously during COVID, and they had a lot of potential. But once they started the anti-Israel agenda, I just crossed them off the list. And basically, I told a couple of them they're cursed by God. So you're going to be very careful when you go against Israel. Now, Israel or Netanyahu he's not perfect. But if I'm going to war against terrorists, I want him on my side and not friggin' Albanese. So, Pauline's got a blessing from the Lord, and the doors will open accordingly for her in this era. Now, when you have a look at, and I'll just bring this post I just did up tonight. I'll bring it up here. Australia has to wake up, seriously wake up. This is the main issue in this country. Sure, there are the economic issues and all the rest of it, but people only relate to what's, the danger in front of them, basically. You can talk economic figures all day, and the average Joe Bloggs is driving his car to work backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. He only worries about what's affecting him today in his pocket, on his mortgage and everything else like that. But this is affecting everyone, and it has, as I said, this is the red line, literally in blood through Bondi, in the sand. So wake up, Australia. The mask is off. The mask is off those who support terrorism. The Free Palestine mob that went on for 2 years, they support Hamas. All this BS about Israel and genocide, just complete fabrication. It's Hamas propaganda. Anti-Israel, anti-Zionism. Zion just simply means Jerusalem. So Zionists under the bed, blaming a small country like Israel for everything that happens in the world that's gone wrong. They must blame Israel, must be that, must be the Zionists, it must be this. It's just mental cognitive disease that these characters carry on with. So complete deception and complete twisting of the truth. So Labor, Greens and Islam, they form a pact not only in Australia, but in the UK, Europe and these areas, and they will fall. Labor will go. Greens will be finished as a party in this country, and Islam is going as well. So now you have a look at what's happened in Iran. Silence on 1 million murdered in Iran since 1979. Not one protest, apart from the Iranian people. But, this mob up here, the Free Palestine mob, do you ever see him even speak up against the genocide of, normal Iranians? And recently, a young wrestler hung for protesting against the regime, hung in the street on a crane or something. This is what these murderous scum do, all in the name of Islam, remember? So, is it Islamophobic? Islamophobic is just simply a deception versus Islam or realism. The realistic point of view is that Islam has 150 verses of jihad in the book that they read. So no matter which way you try and cut it, they're reading a book that tells them in their religion to literal interpretation, which Lakemba's a good example. That when they read this book, it incites them to do what their leader did, and that is terrorize people. And it's all written there. You can go through the Quran yourself, and you can see all these verses written in there. Now, it is a simple fact that there's been 49,123 acts of terrorism since 9/11 by the Religion of Peace. And if you want to check all that out, including every single report, you can go on to thereligionofpeace.com, and they categorically list all the terrorism acts worldwide. So you can just look that up and just see if they just do that little litmus test. Is it Islamophobia, or is it the deception of Islam, a realism? The realistic point of view is that this is a global terrorist death cult, and they're not to be trusted. And is there moderate Muslims? Well, unfortunately, according to the president of Turkey, who's one of the head Muslims, there is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. So, that's the answer to that. And Lakemba, especially around the Lakemba Mosque area, is a typical example. And just recently, regarding when Albanese visited, this is the mentality. You can see it. So when the mask is ripped off, this is what we're seeing. So it is a very, very serious problem in Australia and worldwide. So really has to have something done about it. So the only one that's had guts enough and the intestinal fortitude to stand up against it is Pauline Hanson and the team from One Nation. So what I'm predicting is this, and I've changed to a certain degree about what I felt, because once Pauline stood up for Israel, the whole dynamic changed. You know, no one else did that. None. They tried to follow afterwards, but that's not good enough. You've got to be able to stand up just like Winston Churchill did, stand up against, what's his name, Neville Chamberlain, and the whole Liberal Party that was trying to appease Hitler. And just on this note, Hitler also, you know, formed a pact with Turkey, which was again, you know, Islam, to, you know, to genocide the Jews. So what have we got in 2026? We've got all these characters behind the mask, and I'll just bring that mask up again. Where is it? Here it is. One moment. We'll bring that up again. All these characters here, the Free Palestine mob, the anti-Israel Zionist mob, Labor Greens, Islam mob, you know, the ones who are silent on Iran, Islamophobia mob, which is really Islamorealism, 150 verses of jihad in the book they read, and 49,123 acts of terrorism since 9/11. So you've got that mob behind the scenes pushing the global caliphate agenda, and the likes of, what's the name, I call a disgraced Tame, you know, the global infidel. In other words, stirring up terrorists to assassinate Jews. That's what that statement says. That's what they do. So I think we've got to wake up Australia, and I believe that Australia will stand up against Islam, which is the main issue. The other issues on, you know, economy and all the rest of it, you know, we have to change government, and the only party at this point, and I don't see anyone else standing up, is One Nation. So, you know, you look at Barnaby Joyce, very highly qualified in the finance area. So he calls it like it is. All this green scam BS is just strangling the whole country. You know, we're now in a fuel crisis because of the Strait of Hormuz or Hormuz, Vermouth or Hormuz, or whatever it's called. You know, we've got 30 days of, you know, reserve fuel in this country. It's just laughable. So we really need a complete about face in the whole policy of what's going on in Australia. And the only one, or only party that I can see that is actually stepping in the right direction and attracting the right people is, of course, One Nation. So that's who I personally will be voting for. And I believe it's not going to be 2 years away. It'll be a double dissolution and a referendum on free speech coming up very shortly. And I think the Iran war will, in fact, precipitate a double dissolution. So there's more to come over in Iran. It's not going to go away overnight. I saw, you know, 3 months worth of conflict, but I'll be definitely, for my vote, I'll be definitely putting One Nation first, especially in Queensland. And the other parties can get stuffed as far as I'm concerned. They haven't stood up in the right. In saying that, I know everyone has their shortcomings, but when you look at it in the whole total picture, and you look at you know, who's standing up against Islam, especially, only one party, and that's One Nation. So that's Graham Healy. I've put my endorsement behind Pauline Hanson, and you know, the other groups that I used to support. Very disappointing, very disappointing. You know, because of their stand on Israel, they've cursed themselves, shot themselves in the foot, both feet now, and good luck there. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be cursed. See, the bigger picture is this is a spiritual war. You can see what Donald Trump is. President Trump is bulldozing a level playing field worldwide. He's eliminating the biggest terrorist threat of our era, to build a future for not only America, but for the world. He's really a global president. Saudi Arabia recognizes him as a global president. I recognize him as a global president. And, the only way Australia is going to turn around is when they align with Donald Trump's policies and they align with Israel. And in fact, the big thing when aligning with Israel is that they're top of the pole in technology and stuff like that. Be rest assured. My websites are all with Wix and what have you, and I know that they're totally secure. But in the future vision I had for Australia going back before 2019, what I saw was this, and I'll finish off on this. This was the future vision of Australia. We had a different style of government than we have now, which looks like it's evolving that way now. We had a massive military base, a USA military base in Darwin. It was like a submarine base, but it was like another Pearl Harbor. We turned the central part of Australia into basically the fruit bowl of Australia, where we implemented the Bradford irrigation scheme, and then we irrigated all the central part of Australia. So we were supplying food to Central Asia, Japan, all that, and we really did make Australia great again. And when people talk about put Australia first, of course you've got to put Australia first, but in saying that, you've got to cooperate with your international allies, such as Israel and USA. I mean, if China comes to attack Australia, who are we going to turn to? Palestine, UK, USA. So, wake up, Australia. We have to align our policies with what Trump's doing globally. Support him 100%, support Israel 100%, and the only party doing that is One Nation. And so, as I say, I'm putting my full support behind One Nation now. And I was watching how the play was going, and once these various other politicians and associates that I had started to go against Israel, well, that was the litmus test, and you want to check the scriptures on that very, very carefully. I've posted a piece by Sid Roth on Rise Up Australia Brisbane 2025. You can have a look at the biblical ramifications for going against Israel. But the bottom line is that what the Lord's doing now is sifting the wheat from the chaff. And the litmus test is, are you for or against Israel? That's the question. Those against, you're on the same side as Hamas. Those for are on God's side. Very simple, very biblical. And those Christians, or people who call themselves Christians, that are anti-Israel and claim to interpret the scriptures correctly, you're also on the dark side, you guys. So you're the mob that has got a foot in both camps, and you don't understand the full ramifications of the scriptures. But I'll just leave the broadcast on this. The key scripture is Genesis 12:3. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be cursed. And remember, Jesus was a Jew at the end of the day. And as far as Christianity is concerned, born-again Christians, of which I was born again when I was 19, I don't say I agree with a lot of the church mentality, but, I see the spirit fairly clearly. When you're born again, this is a fact, according to the Apostle Paul, you become spiritual Jews. Think about that. It's biblical. Have a look at it. You always have this love of the Jewish people. You always have this love for your neighbour and all the rest of it. But you can't separate Christianity from the Jewish people, because that was the roots where it started. You can carry on about, did the Jews crucify Jesus and all this other crap. No one crucified Jesus. I'll repeat that again. No one crucified Jesus by force. he had a mission, and he was the sacrifice for the sin of the world. And as Jesus said, when he was being crucified, or as he was being judged, so-called, he could call all the angels of heaven to stop what was going on. But he knew to defeat the dark side, the blood of Jesus had to be used as a sacrifice to save mankind. That's the reality. For those out there claiming to be Christians and, oh, they're against the Jews and all this, or against Pontius Pilate, or they're against someone else, or Barabbas or someone, they've got it all twisted. And it's not biblical. So wake up to yourself. And the reality is that without Jesus going to the cross, which he volunteered, nothing could have stopped Jesus. I mean, he was the Son of God. And yet, the other thing you've got to remember is that Jesus in Revelations is coming back to destroy the enemy. And where is he going to position himself? Well, in Zion. All you blokes and characters going on about Zion. Well, Jesus is coming back to Zion, Jerusalem. And from there, he'll judge the nations. I mean, just read Revelations, for God's sake. Look it up on Google rather than all this crap you're listening to. That's Graham Healy over and out. And God bless Pauline Hanson. She stood up for Israel. God's hand is upon her. And you will see one nation grow and become the third, or really become probably the main opposition, I would say. I don't see any of the other politicians rising up. And the reason is they haven't, over their history, there's a good mate of mine who runs a big cattle property down in South Australia. And we often talk about this. And when we're looking at politicians, be it over COVID or be it now, we look at their background. What were they doing 5 years ago? Were they standing up against Islam then? Were they standing up against, immigration from the Middle East then? No, they weren't. They only, like the Liberal Party, just suddenly started talking about too much immigration from, Middle Eastern war zones, because it's a political point, and the only reason they say that is because one nation brought it up. And you just got to look at them. You look at their history. You look at my history. You can go onto my websites from when I was a Senate candidate for Queensland, a lead Senate candidate, and we were talking about the same thing about Islam then with Daniel Noella, Pastor Daniel Noella. He lived in the Middle East. He saw beheadings. He knows what Islam's all about. And that darkness has arrived here in Australia. But you know what? The light will overcome the darkness. The spirit of the Light Horse Brigade will rise up in this country, and I've predicted that. And as I say, you can have a look at my websites on riseupaustraliabrisbane.com, which was my original one there about the COVID era. I've called it the shots right from day one. And now you have a look at Rise Up Australia Brisbane 2025. And I think I'm going to do another domain name called Wake Up Australia. So you got to wake up. And it's saying the same thing, except this time, on this occasion, the Islamic Caliphate thing that we were on about in 2019 is now the main issue, because we've had terrorism attacks, i.e. Bondi, in Australia. So, once that's happening here on our shores, man, you've just got to call in the army to do something about it. And that's what I'm seeing. And my other prophetic mate, Mark Hovett, seeing that as well. So, God bless. Keep praying for Pauline Hanson and Barnaby Joyce and Corey Bernardi and, Mooney Flynn, Malcolm Roberts. Keep praying for these guys, because, they're standing up, and they're being really standing up for Australia. So, okay, that's Graham Healy over and out, a little bit longer than I thought, and God bless you all. And, we're going to make Australia great, and it just seems as if, what other alternative is there other than one nation? Liberal Party, you're joking. They're finished. One nation's going to be the go. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. See you later. And just before I go, I see Clive Palmer is resurrecting, whatever party he's calling it this time. But Clive's not going to do anything. I mean, I like Clive as a person. I think he's got some good ideas, but as usual, he'll put up a party for whatever election comes out, spend a lot of money, go nowhere, maybe even take the vote away from One Nation. So you just got to watch what happens there. Clive was great over COVID, but have you heard him stand up against Islam or anything like that? No, we're very silent. So yeah, I'm not real fussed on whatever Clive's going to do next. Maybe he should back up One Nation. That's what he should do. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Have a great day.